Chapter 11, Presenting Your Research. Science involves more than just creating theories, setting hypotheses, designing studies, gathering and analyzing data, and refining hypotheses. A key part of science is sharing your results and interpretations with the global community of scientists and the public. Scientific progress is a collective effort, not the work of a few scientists or a single genius. Even Einstein's achievement depended on the discoveries and contributions of his predecessors and colleagues. Science is fundamentally a collective process, collaborative process, rather, involving researchers worldwide. That's why sharing your findings is essential to scientific advancement. In this chapter, we will explore the proper and efficient ways to share research findings. Section 48, American Psychological Association, or APA style. When psychological scientists write a scientific paper, APA style is used. It is a set of guidelines published by the American Psychological Association. The first publication manual was published as a short journal article in 1929, but later it was expanded and published as a book by the APA. At the time of this recording, the latest version is the seventh edition, published in, I think it's 2019, could be 2020 or 2019. The APA style standardizes the scientific writing for effective and clear communication between writers and readers. The APA style provides guidelines for the format and the order of the information so that the writers can focus on contents. Readers can also easily find the information they want to read when the writing format is standardized. The APS style publication manual, over 400 pages long. It used to be the previous version, the edition was, I think, 300 pages, but now it's a 400 pages long, over 400 pages. Covers a large number and a variety of guidelines. So I'm going to go through each of the chapters quickly. The first chapter, chapter 1, the title is Scholarly Writing and Publishing Principles. This chapter addresses types of papers and ethical compliance. Chapter 2, the title is Paper Elements and Format. This chapter helps novice users of APA style select, format, and organize paper elements. Basic research paper consists of a title page, abstract section, introduction section, method section, results section, discussion section, references section, and the tables and figures section. The title page contains the article title, author names, and affiliations. If it is a course assignment, you should also include the title of the course you are enrolled in, the title of the assignment, your instructor's name, and the submission date. The abstract provides a comprehensive summary of the paper and is typically limited to 250 words, although you should confirm the specific word limit with the publisher, institution, or your instructor you are submitting to. What you need to know about the abstract section is that it offers a condensed overview suitable for readers familiar with the topic, as there is a word limit, so it may be hard to understand without relevant background knowledge. For students, it is often helpful to come back to the abstract after reading the full article to enhance understanding. The introduction section includes a literature review relevant to the article and an overview of supporting and opposing theories, discussion of research problems, the rationale for the study, and the proposed hypotheses toward the end. This section is particularly important for readers without prior knowledge, background knowledge. The method section outlines the detailed procedures for conducting the studies, including the development of research materials, participant recruitment, testing methods, and statistical procedures employed. This section is essential for readers who wish to replicate the study or evaluate whether the study was appropriately carried out. The next section is the results section. This involves statistical findings. And after that, the discussion section. This begins with a brief review of the introduction and then explains why this study was necessary. It then discusses the interpretation of the statistical data and compares the results to previous research. The authors consider whether current theories are supported, need revision, or should be abandoned. They also evaluate the study's strengths and weaknesses and suggest ideas for future research based on their findings. The references section lists all cited works, including research articles, scholarly books, and other materials. The tables and figures section, as the name suggests, contains tables and figures. This section should only be included if the authors believe it enhances better communication with the readers. For instance, if the test stimulus include visual stimuli such as pictures, providing an example visual stimulus would be beneficial. Additionally, if the study involves more than 3 conditions, it may be easier for readers to comprehend statistical results laid out in the table format. Including graphs of statistical findings can also be helpful in conveying the data effectively. We will discuss more details for each of the sections later. Let's get back to the chapter description of the APA manual. Chapter 3, the title is Journal Article Reporting Standards. This chapter conveys the journal article reporting standards for reporting quantitative, qualitative, and mixed method research. Chapter 4, Writing Style and Grammar. This chapter provides guidelines on writing style and grammar, such as promoting inclusive usage of terms and avoiding anthropomorphism. Did I say it right? Anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism is incorrectly attributing human actions to inanimate objects or non-human animals. For example, instead of stating the theory concludes, you should state the theory addresses, because the theory does not have its own mind to conclude something. Chapter 5, the title is Bias-Free Language Guidelines. This chapter presents bias-free language guidelines to encourage authors to write about people with inclusivity and respect. Chapter 6, Mechanics of Style. This chapter presents the mechanics of style, including punctuation, capitalization, abbreviations, numbers, and statistics in text. This includes using one space after a period at the end of a sentence. Chapter 7, Tables and Figures. This chapter covers the guidance of creating tables and figures. Chapter 8, Works credited in the text. This chapter discusses appropriate levels of citation as well as plagiarism, self-plagiarism, and other unethical writing practices. Chapter 9, Reference List. This chapter details how to construct the reference section. Chapter 10, Reference Examples. This chapter provides examples of the references. Chapter 11, Legal References. This chapter includes updated legal reference examples. And the last chapter is Chapter 12, Publication Process. This chapter covers guidelines on the publication process. Okay, so citations. Citing other researchers' work is essential in science because science involves large-scale collaboration among researchers. The reference section at the end of an APA style article or a book is a list containing the works cited in the text. APA style provides specific rules for formatting and citing sources. The reference list should start on a new page with the heading References centered at the top. References are then listed alphabetically by the last name of the first author. This list can include various types of works, such as peer-reviewed journal articles, book chapters, magazine articles, websites, government reports, and even television shows and podcasts. In this section, I will explain how to format references for the three most common types of sources cited in APA style: journal articles, books, and book chapters. Note that each reference includes a hanging indent, which means the first line is flush left and all subsequent lines are indented. You can find this feature in different locations depending on the Word app you are using. But for the MS Word version 16, you may locate hanging on the indentation section with the right click after selecting a paragraph. For Apple Pages, version 14, go to Format, select Indent, and change first to 0.5 inches after selecting a paragraph. For other apps, search online for guidance. In the reference list, authors' names are ordered as they appear in the original work, reflecting their respective contributions. Only last names and initials are shown, separated by commas, with an ampersand before the final author. This applies even for two authors. Only the first word of the article title is capitalized, except for proper nouns, adjectives, or subtitles, where the first word of the subtitle is also capitalized. Journal names and volume numbers are italicized, but the issue number within parentheses is not. The reference ends with the Digital Object Identifier, or DOI, providing a permanent online link to the article. There should be no period after the DOI. For book, the format is almost identical to that of the article, but the citation must include the publisher. You add the DOI or URL at the end, separated by a period. There should be no period after the DOI or URL. For a chapter in an edited book, the format differed somewhat from that of the entire book. After the author's names and the copyright year in parentheses, the chapter title appears. Then the editor's names are listed with their first and middle initials followed by their last names, not the other way around, with the abbreviation EDS after in at the beginning of their names. For more than one editor, use EDS. For a single editor, use ED. Only the first word of the book title is capitalized and the entire title is italicized. The chapter page numbers follow in parentheses after the book title with the abbreviation PP. Finally, the citation ends with the publisher and the DOI or URL separated by a period. And again, there should be no period after the DOI or URL. Um, in addition to listing the reference information in the references section, you must cite someone else's work in the text when referring to their ideas. These ideas include phenomena discovered by other researchers, theories they have developed, hypotheses they have derived, and specific methods they have used, such as specific questionnaires or stimulus materials. Citations should be included for factual information that is not common knowledge, allowing other researchers to verify the information themselves. For instance, in an article examining how cell phone use affects driving ability, the author might cite official statistics on the annual number of accidents related to cell phone use. Conversely, widely known methodological and statistical ideas, such as between subject design or t-test, do not require citations. Additionally, very broad statements that are difficult for anyone to contradict are also generally exempt from needing citations. It is important to note, however, that common knowledge, quote unquote, common knowledge about human behavior is frequently incorrect. Therefore, when you are not sure, it's best to cite reliable reference or omit the questionable statement. When citing a work within your manuscript, there are two approaches. Both involve only the author's last names and the publication year. The first approach is to include the author's last names in a sentence without first names or initials, followed by directly by the year of publication in parentheses. One example is this one, and another example is this one. Notice several points. First, the author's names are considered as people's names, not objects. It's preferable to write a replication of milligrams in parentheses, the year of the publication study instead of this. Second, when citing two authors, their names are not separated by commas. However, with three or more authors, commas are used. Third, the word and, not the ampersand, connects the author's names. Fourth, the year appears immediately after the last author's name. Additionally, although not shown here, the year should only be included the first time a particular work is cited within a paragraph. The second method to cite an article or a book chapter is using parenthetical citations, which include the author's last names and the publication year in parentheses immediately after the referenced idea. So this is the one example. And this is another example. Parenthetical citations are usually placed at the end of a sentence to avoid interrupting the flow. Unlike earlier methods, this approach includes the year, even if the same citation appears multiple times in a paragraph. When several citations appear within one set of parentheses, they are listed alphabetically by the first author's name and separated by semicolons. There are no strict guidelines for selecting between the two citation styles, as most articles and book chapters typically incorporate elements of both. Usually, the previously explained methods is effective for highlighting the researcher behind the work, such as when contrasting the theories of two prominent scholars. It is also helpful for giving detailed descriptions of particular studies. Conversely, the second method, discussed earlier in this slide, is more appropriate when presenting a general idea, especially when several citations support the same point. Finally, let's examine the use of ETAL, or at all. This abbreviation derives from the Latin term et alia, meaning and others. According to APA style, if a work such as an article or a book chapter has more than two but fewer than six authors, all their names should be included in the initial citation. Subsequent citations should list only the first author's name, followed by et al. For articles with only two authors, both names must be included in every citation. When a work has six or more authors, only the first author's name, followed by et al., is used in every citation, including the first. One example is the recall that Mel et al. 2007 found that, uh, as you can see on the slide. And another example is there is a strong positive correlation between the number of daily hassles and the number of symptoms people experience. And in parentheses, Kanner et al., 1981. Note that there is no comma between the first author's name and et al. Additionally, there is no period after et, but there is one after al. This occurs because et is a standalone word, whereas al is an abbreviation for alia. Okay, next section 49. Writing a research report in American Psychological Association style. This section explains how to write an APA-style empirical research report, which presents results from one or more new studies. Remember, the standard sections of such the reports serve as a general outline. We will examine each section in detail, discussing its content, formatting, organization, and providing tips for writing. An APA style research report starts with the title page. The title appears centered in the upper half of the page with the important words capitalized. It should clearly and briefly, in roughly 12 words or fewer, convey the main variables and research questions. Sometimes this involves a main title and a subtitle separated by a colon to provide additional detail. Some examples from recent issues of professional journals published by the APA are listed on the slide. To your left. Below the paper title, the authors' names are listed, followed by their institutional affiliation, such as the university or organization where they conducted the research. As previously mentioned, the authors are ordered based on their level of contribution. When several authors contribute equally, they may be listed alphabetically or in a random order. When submitting articles for publication, the title page should include an author note with the author's full institutional affiliations, acknowledgments to funding agencies or colleagues, and contact information. For student papers not submitted for publication, author notes are usually not required. The abstract summarizes the study and is located on the second page of the manuscript, titled Abstract. Its first line is not indented. It includes the research question, a brief overview of the method, key results, and main conclusions. Because abstracts are typically limited to about 250 words, creating a concise yet comprehensive summary can be challenging. Therefore, as mentioned earlier, if you are unfamiliar with research questions, read the rest of the paper before the abstract to better understand the paper. The introduction starts on the third page of the manuscript. Note that the page's heading is not simply introduction. Instead, it displays the full manuscript title with each keyword capitalized as on the title page. The introduction comprises three separate subsections, though these are typically not labeled with distinct headings. The first subsection presents the research question and explains its significance. The literature review covers relevant prior studies, and the final part restates the research question while commenting um, on the methodology used to address it. So the opening. The introduction, typically a paragraph or two long, presents the research question and the reasons for its interest. To engage the reader, Darrell Bem advises beginning with broad observations about the topic, using plain language and avoiding technical jargon. These observations should relate to people and their behavior, not researchers or their studies. Concrete examples can be particularly helpful in this section. Here is a poor example to begin a research report according to BEM. And this one would be much better. Here's the reason. The reason is that the second one explains in detail what Festinger's theory is. After grabbing the reader's attention, the opening should introduce the research question and explain its significance, such as whether the answer addresses a gap in existing literature, if it tests a crucial theory, or if it has practical applications. Clearly describing what the research is about and why it matters will motivate readers to keep reading the review and help their understanding. Following the opening, the literature review presents relevant previous research on the topic and can span from a few paragraphs to several pages. However, it is not just a compilation of past studies. It functions as an argument emphasizing why the research question is significant. By the end of the review, readers should understand the value of the question and see the current study as natural progression in existing research. A literature review requires a clear structure for an effective argument. It might start by outlining a phenomenon in a broad sense, supported by several studies. Then it could compare two or more competing theories of that phenomenon. Ultimately, it presents a hypothesis aimed at testing one or more of these theories. Alternatively, it might introduce one phenomenon, then describe another that appears inconsistent, followed by proposing a theory to resolve this inconsistency, and conclude with a hypothesis to test that theory. In applied research, the review may describe a phenomenon or theory, then explain how it relates to a real-world situation, and finally suggest methods to test its applicability. This perspective on the literature review highlights a few key points. First, beginning with a clear outline of your main points, organized in the sequence you plan to discuss them, is crucial. The overall structure of your argument should be evident from this outline. Second, it's important to emphasize the structure within your writing itself. One effective method is to start the literature review by summarizing your main argument even before elaborating it. For example, in this article, I will describe two apparently contradictory phenomena, present a new theory that can resolve this contradiction, and introduce a novel hypothesis to test the theory. Alternatively, opening each paragraph with a sentence that states its main point and connects it to previous points improves clarity. These opening sentences act as transitions, which many new researchers find challenging. Instead of beginning a paragraph with a study describing like Williams 2004 found that dot dot dot. It's better to start by explaining why the study is relevant. Uh, some simple examples are shown in the slide. Finally, keep in mind that your goal is to create an argument for why your research question is interesting and worthy of investigation, and not necessarily to prove that your preferred answer is correct. Your literature review should be balanced, and if you wish to highlight the prevalence of a phenomenon, you should include studies that support it. Conversely, if there are studies that have failed to find it, you should mention those as well. Similarly, if you are proposing a new theory, include supporting findings, but also discuss any conflicting evidence. It is acceptable to argue that the overall research supports the existence of phenomena or validity of a theory. This is often the best achievable outcome in psychology, but you should not ignore contradictory evidence. Additionally, uncertainty about the answer is part of what makes a research question interesting. The conclusion of the introduction, usually the last one or two paragraphs, generally contains two key elements. The first is a clear articulation of the main research question and hypothesis. This statement tends to be more formal and precise than in the introduction's opening, often using operational definitions of the core variables. The second element is a brief overview of the research method, along with some commentary on its suitability. For example, Darley and Latane, 1968, wrapped up their introduction with the remarks on their influential article about the bystander effect. Um, so they, yeah, I put that excerpt on the slide. And the last part of their introduction transitions seamlessly into the article's next key part, which is the method section. The method section explains how your study was conducted. It should contain detailed and clear enough information in case other researchers want to replicate your work or evaluate validity and reliability of your methods. This includes describing key elements such as participants' basic demographics, recruitment methods, random assignment to conditions, variable manipulation or measurement, and counterbalancing procedures. However, it should omit irrelevant details like the fact that the study took place in classroom 212 of the education building, or that the questionnaire was double-spaced with Times New Roman font, unless these are independent variables that researchers are testing. After the participants section, the structure may vary slightly. The figure on the slide to your left illustrates three common approaches. The first approach involves following the participants section with a combined design and procedure subsection that outlines the rest of the method. This is suitable for simpler methods that can be explained in a few paragraphs. By the way, design and procedure are distinct concepts. The design of a study is its overall structure. Researchers describe the independent and dependent variables, whether the independent variable is manipulated. They also describe if it was manipulated between or within subjects. They also describe what the operational definition was for variables. Procedure, on the other hand, refers to how the study was conducted, usually from the participant's perspective rather than the researchers. For instance, the researchers might describe that the participants provided the informed consent, read instructions, completed a set of 4 practice trials, then block of 20 test trials, and filled out 2 questionnaires before being debriefed and dismissed. The second approach on the table in the slide is a typically used method. It involves following the participant section with the separate design and procedure subsections. This is ideal when both subsections are complex and require multiple paragraphs. The third common way to organize a method section involves placing the materials subsection after participants before the design and procedure sections. This approach is useful when describing complex materials such as multiple questionnaires, written vignettes, read and responded to by participants, perceptual stimuli, and similar items. The heading of this subsection can be customized to match its content, such as questionnaires or stimuli. Additionally, the materials subsection is a good place to discuss the reliability and validity of the measures, including test-retest correlations, Cronbach's alpha, or other relevant statistics to demonstrate that the measures are consistent over time and across items and genuinely measure what they are intended to. The results section presents the main findings of the study, including statistical analysis outcomes. While it does not contain raw data like individual responses or scores, such data should not be discarded. Instead, it should be accessible to other researchers upon request. Many journals promote open sharing of raw data online, with some even requiring open data and materials before publication. Researchers must ensure that they do not link participants' identifiable information with the data to protect their privacy. Although the results section lacks formal subsections, it should still be organized logically. It typically starts with addressing preliminary issues. First, clarify whether any participants or responses were excluded from the analysis and explain why, providing a clear rationale so other researchers can assess the appropriateness. Second, describe how multiple responses were combined to form the primary variables, such as averaging attractiveness ratings across participants, or calculating the number of items recalled correctly, the percentage, or the difference between correct and incorrect responses from a list of 20 words. Lastly, verify whether the manipulation was successful by reporting the outcomes of any manipulation checks. The results section should address each primary research question individually, ensuring clear organization. One method is to start with the most general questions and then move to more specific ones. Alternatively, you could begin with the main question and then address secondary ones. BEM recommends the following basic structure for discussing each new result. First, remind the reader of the research question in maybe several sentences or a paragraph at most. Two, give the answer to the research question in words so that even readers without specific knowledge in statistics can understand your points. Three, present the relevant statistics. Qualify the answer if necessary. Four, summarize the result. Note that only step 3 requires the use of numbers. The earlier steps focus on stating the research question and its answer in words. The main findings should be understandable even to readers who overlook the numerical data. The discussion is the last major section of the research report. Discussions usually consist of some combination of the elements, such as summary of the research, including the summary of the literature review, theoretical implications, practical implications, limitations of the research, and suggestions for future research. Typically, the discussion begins with a summary of the study that clearly addresses the research question. For a short report with a single study, this may be just one sentence. For a longer report covering multiple studies, it could span a paragraph or two, or possibly three. This summary is usually followed by an examination of the researcher's theoretical implications, such as whether the results support existing theories. If not, it should suggest possible explanations. Although a definitive answer or detailed theory is not required, proposing one or more plausible explanations is helpful. In both applied and basic research, the discussion often includes the practical implications of the findings, addressing how and by whom the results can be applied to achieve real-world objectives. The discussion of a study limitations often comes after outlining its theoretical and practical implications. These limitations could involve internal or external validity problems, ineffective manipulation, unreliable measures, or participants not fully understanding the task or doubting researchers' intentions. It is important to acknowledge these concerns and reflect on their potential impact on the results without overemphasizing them. Since all studies have limitations and diverse samples or measures can produce different outcomes, it's best to focus on two or three key limitations. Explain how these might have affected the findings and suggest ways to address them. Most discussions conclude with suggestions for future research. If the study did not fully answer the original research question, what steps are needed to resolve it? What new research question has the study generated? However, this section is not merely a list of questions. It should highlight two or three of the most critical unresolved issues, clearly define each question, propose possible answers, and suggest methods for investigation. Some researchers excel at concluding their articles with a broad or thought-provoking statement. For instance, Darley and Layton, 1968, concluded their piece of the bystander effect by suggesting that whether people help others may rely more on the situation than on personal traits. Their closing sentence reads, here's the quote, if people understand the situational forces that can make them hesitate to intervene, they may better overcome them. Nonetheless, such endings can be challenging to execute effectively. They may come across as overstated or trivial, potentially weakening the article's overall impact. Often it's more effective to conclude by revisiting the initial problem or topic from your introduction and explicitly showing how your research addresses it. By the way, if you are a student in a hurry and have some background knowledge in the research areas the article focuses on, I recommend reading the discussion section first. It provides a comprehensive overview of the research paper, covering all the essential information you need to know. The references section starts on a new page with the heading References centered at the top. All cited sources are listed in the same format as before and arranged alphabetically by the first author's last name. If two sources share the same first author, they are ordered by the second author's last name. If all authors are identical, then they are listed in chronological order by publication year. The entire reference list is double-spaced within and between entries. Tables and figures are placed after the references section. These pages are suitable for supplementary materials that might disrupt the flow of the research report if included within the main sections. It can be used to present lists of visual stimulus words, questionnaire items, detailed descriptions of special equipment or unusual statistical analysis, references to studies in a meta-analysis, graphs, flowcharts, or various other information. Each table and figure should begin on its own page. Tables are numbered in the order of they are first mentioned in the text, such as Table 1 or Table 2. Similarly, figures are numbered sequentially, such as Figure 1, Figure 2. Each table has a brief descriptive title placed above it. Each table or figure includes a short caption, the starting with a note at the bottom. Okay, next one is the last section, section 50, other presentation formats. In addition to writing an empirical research report in APA style, there are several other approaches to presenting new research findings in the field of psychological science. The earlier section covered writing empirical research reports intended for publication in professional journals. However, many other types of manuscripts are also written in APA style, and most are not submitted for publication elsewhere. Some of these manuscripts are review articles and theoretical articles. Review articles summarize existing research on a specific topic without presenting new empirical findings. When these articles introduce a new theory, they are often called theoretical articles. Both review and theoretical articles typically follow a structure similar to empirical research reports, including a title page, abstract, references, the tables and figures, and are written in comparable high-level and low-level styles. However, they do not include methods or results section, obviously, since they do not report new empirical data. The body of these articles should still be logically organized, starting with an introduction that states the topic and its importance, followed by a literature review that arranges previous research, highlighting key relationships among concepts or gaps, and concluding with a summary of main findings, suggestions for future research, or discussions of theoretical and practical implications. In theoretical article, much of the content focuses on introducing the new theory. These articles are usually divided into sections with relevant headings for each part. While these sections and headings can differ widely between articles, unlike in empirical research reports, they should help organize the paper and make the overall argument more clear. Due to the nature of review and theoretical articles, I highly recommend reading them as an initial step when seeking new research ideas. So far, we have focused on formatting manuscripts intended for journal submission. However, other types of manuscripts are produced by the author in their final form without planning for future publication. These are called final manuscripts and include doctoral dissertations, master's theses, plural, and other student papers. They may differ from purely APA formatted manuscripts by improving readability, such as placing tables and figures near the relevant text rather than putting them after the reference section. For example, dissertations or the plural of thesis, I cannot say this, theses, often do not strictly adhere to APA formatting. When preparing student papers, it's important to check with the course instructor for specific formatting guidelines. In research methods courses, students usually expected to write papers as if they were submitting them for publication. Psychologists share research at professional conferences, which range from small gatherings of about a dozen researchers to large multi-day events with thousands of attendees. While informal discussions happen often, the main presentation formats are oral talks and posters. Usually, presenters submit an abstract in advance for approval, though the peer review process tends to be less rigorous than that for journal articles. An oral presentation, or just a talk, involves a presenter sharing their research with an audience of fellow researchers, often using a slideshow. These talks usually last between 10 to 20 minutes, with the last few minutes dedicated to audience questions. At larger conferences, talks are generally they're grouped into sessions lasting 1 or 2 hours, all centered on a common broad topic. When preparing a presentation, presenters should keep several key principles in mind. First, aim for approximately 1 slide per minute of talk. Second, organize the presentation like an APA style research report. That is, start with a slide featuring the title and authors, then follow with slides on background, methodology, results, and conclusions. Third, engage the audience by maintaining eye contact and speaking in a conversational tone that is less formal than APA format, but more so than casual conversation. The slides should act as visual supports, emphasizing key points through bullet lists or simple tables and figures rather than being the main focus. Another way to present research at a conference is through poster session. Typically, posters are displayed during a 1 hour event in a large conference room. Presenters set up their posters on bulletin boards arranged around the space and stand nearby. Attendees then move around, read the posters, and engage with the presenters. It is not just for psychological scientists, but researchers across all scientific fields use posters, and their popularity is growing. One key reason for their popularity is that posters foster meaningful interactions among researchers. Uh, Posters are usually large, around 4 feet wide and 3 feet high. They organize information into sections following APA style, such as a title, author's name, and affiliation, an introduction, a method section, the results section, discussion section, conclusions, the references section, and acknowledgments. While posters can feature an abstract, it might be unnecessary since the poster itself is kind of a summary of the research. Since posters are often presented in busy environments like crowded ballrooms where people are eating, drinking, and socializing, they should be designed to clearly and simply communicate the main ideas behind the research. Use a large font size, maybe 72 points for titles and authors' names, and 28 points for the main text. I don't know, I might use a little bit bigger points than 28. Organize information into sections with clear headings and break text into sentences, or I recommend bulleted points rather than dense paragraphs. Do not put too much information on the poster. Arranging content in columns that flow from top to bottom is preferable to the row layouts as it facilitates easier reading for multiple people simultaneously. To add visual interest, posters often feature colorful figures, visual stimuli, copies, photographs of the equipment used for the research, or simulated testing scenarios. But do not make background too busy as it makes the text on the poster hard to read. Presenters should engage with visitors by explaining their research and use the poster as a visual support. At a minimum, presenters should stand by their posters, greet visitors, offer to answer questions, and be ready for inquiries and occasional critical remarks. You should also make a more detailed written summary of the research ready to distribute to visitors, or maybe better yet, make the QR code to download the summary, or at least provide the contact details so they can request further information later. This is the last slide of chapter 11.